A visitor released his bulldog near a royal guard, thinking that a bit of fear might make the guard back down. But when the guard moved his hands, the gathered crowd gasped. His fierce beast had met its equal. Here is exactly what unfolded. However, before we continue, let us know in the comments below where you are watching from. Also, subscribe to the channel if you respect the royal guards. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Buckingham Palace grounds as guard Oliver Thompson kept his post. His red uniform stood out sharply against the old stone, while the usual hum of visitor chatter and camera clicks filled the air. Yet something else caught his attention. The deep, rumbling growl of a bulldog being restrained by a worn leather leash. "Easy there, Biscuit," a man said in a tone that was falsely sweet, but barely hid his anger. "You will soon meet the little soldier." Samuel Carter, a solid-built man in his 40s wearing cargo shorts and a sleeveless top that showed off his tattooed arms, pushed through the crowd. His bulldog, Biscuit, strained against the leash, its strong muscles rippling under its brown and white coat. Several visitors instinctively stepped back, forming a small circle around Carter and his dog. A mother quickly pulled her young son behind her, while an older couple exchanged worried looks. Biscuit's presence was not normally a cause for alarm. Many visitors brought their pets to the palace grounds. But something in Carter's manner, a deliberate air of menace in how he handled the leash-raised red flags. "Look at him standing there," Carter announced to no one in particular, jerking Biscuit's leash as the dog's growls grew louder. All dressed up in his fancy outfit as if he were someone special, Carter stepped closer to Thompson's position, purposely letting Biscuit strain toward the guard. "What do you think, boy? Will he stay still if you give him a proper greeting?" Thompson stood firm, his eyes fixed ahead with the calm discipline of someone well-trained. 8 years in the forces, including 2 tours in Afghanistan, had taught him to size up dangers without showing any reaction. He watched Carter's stance carefully, the way he kept shortening Biscuit's leash only to let it slack again, a clear, calculated pattern meant to annoy. The bulldog, despite its fierce display, was responding to commands that showed it was not out of control. This was not random misbehavior. It was a planned act of intimidation. "Sir, perhaps you should step back. These guards are active-duty military," a middle-aged man in a tour group said. "Shut it," Carter snapped, yanking Biscuit's leash once more. "Biscuit and I are just saying hello, aren't we, boy?" The bulldog's growl deepened, but there was a hint of confusion in its stance as it began to pick up on something else in Thompson's steady presence. "Unless you'd like to be his first greeting of the day," the tour guide said quietly as he started moving his group away, recognizing that trouble was escalating. Yet Carter had his full attention, and his voice rang out louder over the courtyard. "What's the matter, soldier boy? Not brave enough when faced with something that can actually bite back, are you?" Thompson stayed in place, but his training had already noted several problems: the deliberate provocation, using an animal as a weapon, and the growing risk to bystanders. As Carter moved even nearer, Biscuit's leash now barely between him and the guard, Thompson prepared himself. Years of experience told him that this situation needed more than just ceremonial discipline. It required a perfect mix of authority and control. "You know what I love about Biscuit, right?" Carter circled closer, his voice carrying a practiced edge of menace. "He really can sense weakness, don't you, boy?" He loosened the leash just enough to allow the bulldog to edge forward. Its strong shoulders bunched with each step, and at that moment, it seemed to be catching plenty of that scent. A small group of school children huddled behind their teacher, watched wide-eyed as the scene unfolded. The teacher, a tall woman with graying hair, tried to lead them towards the palace gates, but Carter's next words made them freeze. "Don't leave just yet, kids," he called out with a cruel smile. "Biscuit loves an audience, don't you, boy?" The bulldog's growls shifted to a higher pitch, clearly reacting to the tension in its owner's voice, especially when someone is pretending not to be afraid. An older man wearing a veteran's pin stepped forward, his weathered face etched with disapproval. "That's enough of this nonsense. This is a place of ceremony and respect." "Respect?" Carter barked a harsh laugh, deliberately letting Biscuit lunge forward before snapping the leash back. The Bulldog's teeth flashed in the morning sun. "Tell me, old-timer, how much respect do you think this fancy-dressed soldier deserves when Biscuit decides to test just how fast he can really move?" The veteran held his ground, his eyes showing concern not for himself, but for the dangerous game Carter was playing. "Son, that guard is a serving member of Her Majesty's forces," the veteran said firmly. "Biscuit," Carter interrupted, his voice dropping to a command. "Show this gentleman what we think of his opinion." The Bulldog's growl deepened as Carter let the leash out by another inch. The veteran took a small step back, not out of fear, but in a tactical retreat. His military experience told him that this situation had gone far beyond any reasonable debate. A young couple who had been filming the palace quickly tucked their phones away, realizing that recording would only make matters worse. "That's right," Carter nodded with satisfaction. "Everyone likes to play the hero until Biscuit gets interested. Isn't that right, boy?" He reached down to pat the Bulldog's head, a gesture that should have been kind, but it came across as menacing. "Now, let's see what our fancy guard thinks about facing a real soldier." Thompson stayed still, his trained eyes missing no detail. He noted how Carter used the dog's reactions to control the crowd, every threat carefully measured. This was not random aggression, it was a planned use of an animal as a weapon. More troubling still was how Carter kept shifting his grip on the leash, alternating between firm control and deliberate agitation. "Look at him standing there," Carter continued in a sing-song tone that made several onlookers wince in their stiff, proper ways, while Biscuit became ever more curious. The Bulldog's strong body trembled with built-up energy as it responded to Carter's manipulative tone. "What do you say, boy? Shall we see if he is really as brave as he pretends to be?" A palace security officer appeared at the edge of the crowd, speaking quietly into his radio, but Carter caught sight of him and his face darkened. "Calling for backup already, eh? Biscuit doesn't like uniforms much, does he, boy?" He shortened the leash, pulling the Bulldog's muscular form closer. "Maybe we should show everyone what happens when someone thinks a fancy costume makes them untouchable." The morning air grew heavy with tension as Carter's intentions became clearer with each step. The circle of onlookers widened, creating an arena-like space that would soon be the stage for confrontation. "Tell me something," Carter said directly to the guard, positioning Biscuit just yards away from Thompson's impeccably polished boots. "Behind all that ceremony and tradition, you're just flesh and blood, aren't you?" He let the leash extend slightly, allowing the Bulldog to edge closer, just like everyone else who thought they could challenge him. The guard's perfect stillness seemed to annoy Carter even more. In his experience, fear had a smell, a visible tremor, a subtle sign. But Thompson remained as unmoved as the palace walls behind him. Even Biscuit seemed unsure now, its aggressive stance faltering as it occasionally glanced back at Carter, as if seeking confirmation. "You see, Biscuit has a special talent," Carter continued, his voice darkening. "He can smell fear through all that fancy dress-up, can't you, boy?" He jerked the leash sharply, causing the Bulldog to bark, a sound that echoed off the palace stones and made several children move closer to their parents. A woman in a business suit pulled out her phone, perhaps to call for help, but Carter's head whipped toward her immediately. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," he warned, letting Biscuit turn and growl in her direction. "Biscuit gets very nervous around phones, doesn't he, boy? They make him act unpredictably." The woman slowly lowered her phone, but her other hand clutched the arm of a nearby visitor as they both stood firm despite their fear. The crowd's mood had shifted from concern to simmering anger at this deliberate threat against a guard who could not even defend himself. "You know what I think." Carter moved even closer. Biscuit's powerful body now just about 3 feet from Thompson. "I think all this," he gestured at the guard's uniform with his free hand, "is just for show, a costume to hide behind. But Biscuit, he sees through that, doesn't he, boy?" The Bulldog's behavior grew more conflicted. Although still following Carter's aggressive cues, something about Thompson's unwavering presence confused it. Its growls were mixed with moments of uncertainty, its strong head tilting as if trying to understand the conflicting signals. "We've done this before, haven't we, Biscuit?" Carter's voice now carried a note of cruel pride. "Remember that security guard at the mall? The bouncer at that pub? All these tough guys until Biscuit shows them what real power looks like. But this one," he nodded toward Thompson, "this one thinks his fancy hat and shiny buttons make him special." A palace guard sergeant stepped in from the side, calmly assessing the situation. But before he could intervene, Carter's next words stopped everyone in their tracks. "Let me tell you what is going to happen," Carter announced, his voice filled with deliberate menace. His fingers fiddled with the clip on the leash, the metal catching the sunlight with every twist. Sweat began to bead on his forehead, not from the morning heat, but from the growing frustration at not being able to provoke a reaction. "In about 30 seconds, Biscuit is going to test your commitment to staying still. And believe me," his smile turned predatory, "years of using intimidation have given me quite a record for making people move." The palace guard sergeant took another measured step, his military bearing clearly evident in his controlled manner. But Carter's reaction was immediate. His body language shifted to threaten on both sides. "One step closer," he warned, yanking Biscuit's leash just enough to draw a deep, echoing growl off the palace walls, so that everyone could see just how fast Biscuit might run. The Bulldog's muscles tensed beneath its coat as it responded to the increasing tension in the leash, while its eyes flitted between Carter and Thompson with growing uncertainty. Thompson remained still, yet his military training had already mapped out several responses from his years in combat and specialized training. He noticed the slight flick of Biscuit's ears at certain tones in Carter's voice. Not pure aggression, but uncertainty. It was a sign of conflict between trained responses and natural instincts. Most importantly, he recognized that the real danger was not the Bulldog, but the man holding the leash. "Time's up, soldier boy," Carter whispered dangerously, his fingers now playing with the leash clip in a way that revealed his true intentions. Every move was calculated to build the tension. "Let's see how well that training holds when Biscuit decides to make a move." His fingers moved to the clip. The metal glinted in the morning sun as his thumb found the release mechanism. "Ready or not," he said, and the sound of the clip releasing echoed across the courtyard like a gunshot. "Get him, Biscuit." Carter's command cracked through the air with vicious satisfaction as the Bulldog lunged forward. Time seemed to slow. Thompson's military training took over his mind, calculating each movement even as his body stayed perfectly still. He observed every detail, the Bulldog's strong muscles coiling for the attack, the horrified gasps of the crowd, Carter's triumphant sneer. But most importantly, he saw what others missed, the hesitation in Biscuit's charge, the conflict in the dog's body language at the very last moment. When Biscuit was only inches away, Thompson acted with fluid precision. Instead of defending or retreating, he dropped into a controlled crouch. His white-gloved hands moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had handled military dogs in combat. The terrified screams of the crowd shifted into gasps of amazement as Thompson caught Biscuit mid-lunge, his hands finding pressure points that combat trainers had perfected over generations. The Bulldog's momentum was redirected. Its aggressive charge turned into a smooth descent as Thompson guided it gently to the ground. "Easy there, soldier," Thompson said in a calm, firm tone, his voice carrying the confidence of a seasoned dog handler. his hands pressed on the right spots to make Biscuit's fierce posture melt away. "You're better than what you've been made to do, aren't you?" A frustrated Carter shouted, his triumphant expression shattering into disbelief. "Biscuit, attack! What are you doing? Get him!" But his commands fell on deaf ears. The Bulldog responded to Thompson's touch, as if recognizing true authority and kindness. "You have been trained for this, haven't you?" Thompson continued, his steady tone never wavering as his hands worked with precision. "Generations of breeding meant for service and loyalty, to work alongside handlers who respect their heritage, not to be turned into weapons for a small man's petty display of power." Carter's voice cracked with rage and disbelief. "No, this is impossible. That's my dog, Biscuit. Come here right now." But every command only made him sound more desperate and pathetic. The Palace Guard sergeant had now stepped in, joined by 2 police officers. Their approach was careful, yet they had no reason to worry. Biscuit stayed perfectly calm under Thompson's gentle control, watching his former owner's frantic commands with detached interest. "A dog like this," Thompson addressed the crowd, "can recognize real authority. It knows the difference between someone who leads with fear and someone who commands with respect." His hands then demonstrated basic commands that Biscuit followed eagerly, as if desperate to please someone who finally spoke his language. "Let me explain something about this magnificent animal you have been mistreating," Thompson said, turning directly to Carter. "This is not an attack dog bred for intimidation. This is a British Bulldog descended from lines that served alongside the military and the police. Everything about him, from his muscle structure to his intelligence, was developed over generations for a noble purpose." Biscuit now sat contentedly at Thompson's feet, his powerful body relaxed but alert, responding to subtle hand signals that Thompson used. The transformation was remarkable. The same dog that had been snarling moments ago now showed perfect military-grade obedience. "Look at his response to proper handling," Thompson added, his white gloves guiding Biscuit through a series of precise movements. "These aren't just tricks. They are inherited skills, bred into him by professionals who truly understood what these animals could do. And you, Carter, have twisted that potential into something shameful." Carter's face turned a deep red. "He's my dog. I paid good money for him," he protested. "Money does not equal true ownership." Thompson cut him off sharply. "Ownership comes with responsibility, care, and understanding. What you have done is take a breed meant for courage, loyalty, and service, and corrupted it into a tool for cheap intimidation." The police officers moved closer, yet they too were drawn in by the lesson unfolding before them. A sergeant stood nearby, his presence lending weight to Thompson's words. "Do you see those children?" Thompson gestured towards the school group that had huddled in fear earlier. "You brought an agitated animal into a public space filled with families. One wrong move, one moment of lost control, and a child could have been seriously hurt. And it wouldn't have been Biscuit's fault. It would have been yours." Running his hand along the Bulldog's powerful shoulders, he continued, "These animals are capable of incredible things when properly trained and respected. They can help in search and rescue, provide therapy, work with law enforcement. Instead, you chose to use him to threaten innocent people, to make yourself feel powerful." Biscuit's tail wagged steadily as Thompson's white-gloved hands found just the right pressure points. His entire demeanor showed what the breed could be under proper guidance. The difference between the snarling beast from earlier and this dignified animal was stark. "The real tragedy," Thompson continued with a tone of professional disappointment, "is that you have had this dog long enough to undo his proper training. The response points and command positions, they are still there, bred into him over generations. But you have layered fear and aggression on top of his natural instincts, which should have been nurtured rather than corrupted." By now the crowd had grown larger, drawn by the unusual sight of a royal guard giving an impromptu lesson while expertly handling a former attack dog. Parents who had earlier shielded their children moved closer so that they too could see how the same animal could behave under proper guidance. Every time you used him to threaten someone, every time you encouraged aggression over discipline, you weren't just breaking the law, you were betraying centuries of careful breeding and a noble purpose. Thompson's hands continued their precise demonstration, showing how Biscuit obeyed proper signals. "This isn't just about animal abuse," he said, "although that in itself is serious. It is about taking an animal meant for service and protection and twisting it into a weapon for your own shortcomings." Carter's attempts at showing off had completely collapsed. He stood deflated, watching as his so-called weapon responded to Thompson's commands with eager enthusiasm, a clear display of the intelligence and discipline that spoke of his true breeding. A dog like this should be worked with by professionals who understand his inherited abilities, Thompson told the gathered crowd. Instead, you used him to make up for your own weaknesses and to threaten those you deem beneath you. His eyes locked on Carter's. But as we can all see, true authority does not come from fear. It comes from understanding, respect, and the kind of discipline that this animal recognizes far better than you ever could. Biscuit's transformation under Thompson's care had become a powerful symbol, a living demonstration of how proper training and respect can overcome learned aggression. The children, who had hidden behind their parents, now watched in wonder as Biscuit executed complex commands with perfect precision. "The authorities will decide what happens next," Thompson concluded, his voice full of both authority and compassion. "But I want everyone here to understand something. This animal is not dangerous by nature. What is dangerous is a person who uses animals to threaten others, who mistakes fear for respect, who believes that ownership gives them the right to corrupt a creature bred for a noble purpose." His white-gloved hands moved for one final demonstration of proper handling. These animals are meant to be disciplined, intelligent, and capable of serving alongside those who truly value them, not used as weapons for small men trying to intimidate others. As the animal protection officers arrived on the scene, their expressions shifted from concern to professional interest, watching how impeccably Biscuit behaved under Thompson's guidance. The lead officer, a woman with graying hair and eyes that had seen too many cases of abuse, addressed him. "A military breeding line, wouldn't you say?" Thompson nodded in agreement. "From what I can tell, Biscuit's response to pressure points and commands suggests professional training." His eyes flickered towards Carter, who was now being questioned by police officers. Before Carter's protestations could continue, the animal protection officer produced a proper handling lead. But before she could attach it, Thompson demonstrated one final sequence of commands. Biscuit responded perfectly, showcasing the intelligence and training that had been buried under layers of mistreatment. "We will ensure he finds a proper role," she assured Thompson quietly. "There are specialized units looking for dogs with his breeding, especially ones that can still obey proper commands despite misuse." As Carter was led away in handcuffs, his earlier bravado completely vanished. The very same crowd he had tried to intimidate now watched in silent judgment as he was escorted to a waiting police car, his protests falling on deaf ears. Biscuit, meanwhile, followed the officer's lead without resistance, but not before turning to give one final look at Thompson. There was a deep understanding in that moment, a silent recognition between two beings bred for service, one having helped the other remember his true nature. Thompson then resumed his post with military precision, his white gloves still immaculate despite the intense handling they had just undergone. The morning sun caught the brass buttons on his uniform as he returned to his ceremonial stance, but onlookers noticed something else, a deeper appreciation for the training and capability hidden beneath the ceremonial exterior. A sergeant approached briefly, saying quietly, "Well handled," though he suspected that dog handling was not part of the standard guard training. 3 years with the Royal Army Veterinary Corps before joining the Guards, sir, Thompson replied, his eyes fixed forward in perfect ceremonial form. I specialize in the rehabilitation of military working dogs. The sergeant nodded, a slight smile touching his lips. It seems some training never leaves you, sir. As the crowd began to disperse, parents explained to their children not only the Guards' ceremonial duty, but also the deeper training and capabilities beneath the surface. The incident had revealed an important lesson. That true authority comes not from force or fear, but from understanding, respect, and proper training. What would you have done in such a situation? How would you have reacted to someone using an innocent animal as a tool for intimidation? The Royal Guard's response demonstrated not only physical training, but also a deeper understanding of duty and compassion, qualities that truly define authority. If this story resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think we can better protect animals from misuse while honoring their noble breeding and purpose? Don't forget to like this video if you believe in treating all creatures with dignity and respect, and subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories about the Royal Guard living symbols of duty and honor.